Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Matthew Littlefield, here for another episode of No Such Thing as a Scot. Today's topic is the island of Forvik. I have with me here four experts in their field: Brianna Lee, head of historical analysis;
Hello.
Melissa Jensen, oil researcher;
Hi.
Hannah Lawson, representative of Hill himself;
Hello.
and Imogene Hawkins, researching the consequences of Hill and the Forvik case.
Hi.
Okay, so the first topic we're going over is going to be the history. So, what year is currently understood to be the year that Scotland gained control over Shetland?
Many textbooks and information sources point to 1469 being the year Shetland was handed over to Scotland, though there's been debate over whether this is the right year. 1472 was also a suggested year, though the person who said this later retracted their statement and said 1469 was indeed the correct year.
How can a country take control of a piece of land legitimately?
So the way a land can be taken control of is through either conquest, cession, or terra nullius. The Vikings in the 9th century obtained control of Shetland through conquest. In 1266, Norway sold the Sudreys and the Isle of Man to Scotland for 4,000 marks with an annual 100 mark payment. This was done through the Treaty of Perth and thus cession. This treaty, in Stuart Hill's eyes, confirms that the Orkney and Shetland belonged to Norway. By the 14th century, Scotland was no longer able to pay the annual payment to Norway, so it was determined that the Scottish King James III would marry Princess Margaret of Denmark, because Norway was under Danish rule at the time. As part of the dowry, King Christian of Denmark had to pay 60,000 florians, but currently did not have the money, so he gave the Orkney and Shetland Islands to King James III as a placeholder, thus not changing the ownership of those lands permanently.
So, why now has Scotland's ownership of Shetland come into question?
Stuart Hill has found different documents and acts that show a questionable hold of ownership by Scotland over the Shetland Islands, such as the 1472 Act of Annexation. King James III wrote this act in an attempt to keep the islands in a lawful way, though it is not seen as a lawful way after the fact, and thus is not a confirmation of ownership. There was also a letter found by King James III to King Christian's son, John, in 1486 that shows King James III does not acknowledge the islands as being under Scottish jurisdiction. There were further acts such as the 1669 Act of Annexation and the 1707 Act of the Union that also did not confirm the ownership of Shetland by Scotland.
Fascinating. Thank you for the historical analysis, Brianna. Next up, we have the representative of Hill himself, Hannah Lawson. Who exactly is Hill?
So Hill, who has also been named Captain Calamity, is a 75-year-old man who is originally English, and he found himself in Shetland after his ship was wrecked. Due to this, he became interested in the Udall law after trying to understand the rights of his sunken ship.
So what did Hill do exactly?
So Hill occupied a small island in 2008, just off the west coast of Shetland. He named this island Forvik. He believes that the Shetland Island never belonged to Scotland, so he has the right to withdraw from the UK. So Hill then left the EU and refuses to pay tax now that he's a citizen and the founder of his own independent state of Forvik. Hill also went as far as creating his own flag, stamps and money, and people can also pay for his citizenship to show support for the island of Forvik.
So what exactly was his purpose in occupying the land?
So Hill's purpose was to show what Shetland could do if they asserted the power which they already have. The purpose of occupying the island is to see how the UK and the Scots authorities would derive the power when challenged.
Very good, thank you. So Hill invited oil companies to bid for exploration rights in the island's territorial waters. What more could you tell us about this, Melissa?
So far, no oil companies have approached Hill, and it is highly unlikely that any will do so. Oil companies usually do not take risks such as this when it comes to territorial claims, as Hill has proposed. As there are many debates on the subject, oil companies would normally prefer to avoid the legal issues and work within the set framework of nation-states to keep a political stability. The EEZ and territorial waters Hill claims should belong to Forvik would bring more problems to the oil companies, as if oil was then found there, Scotland would have to negotiate an overlap claim with Forvik.
If you were an oil company, would you take this risk?
No.
And finally, what consequences did founding Forvik have on Hill? Therefore, what penalty does he have to pay for his actions?
Well, in 2011, The Guardian reported that Hill, who was charged with driving without an MOT, insurance or road tax, he was also banned from driving for 6 months. Finally, Hill was also ordered to do unpaid work for the British state for a reported 100 hours.
What are the political implications of Hill's actions?
Well, in terms of the EU, Hill decided to quit both the UK and the EU when he declared the state of Forvik independent, as he said that he recognises neither the British government nor the European Union as its superior.
Thanks for joining me here on No Such Thing as a Scot, the Forvik edition. It's been a pleasure to have you all.
Thank you for having us.